Saxon Algebra 1, Lesson 50. We're going to talk about graphing, but first, grab your check page if you have one. This is the beginning of our new year. There's no homework due on the Monday of this week because you got the work week off. So now I'm teaching you these lessons, and the homework for these will be due a week from now on January 10th, a weekish, depending on when you're listening to this. I already taught that lesson, and I'm teaching this one now. I get to cross them off. All right, this is always a little confusing to students because remember, this checklist shows you when the homework is due, and you do not have any new homework due today. These lessons will be due next week. Okay, enough about that. I like this lesson because for most students, it is a big, fat review of things that you already covered and you probably already understand reasonably well. So let's talk about graphing. You're probably comfortable with the idea of a number line. You've probably been schooled in number lines for a long time. You know that they start with a 0. And they go in the positive direction. And then they also go in the negative direction, don't they? Remember, these numbers, we call them integers. They are the positives and the negatives, but no fractions. The fractions live on the number line, but we don't talk about them a whole lot. We mostly are talking about the integers. Now, what makes this kind of graphing special is that it's two number lines. What? Look at that. It's a number line going through a number line. This one has the same kind of arrangement. The positives go up, right? The positives go to the right and the positives go up, and then the negatives go down. Okay, we can draw in as many as we like or need, right? This is called a Cartesian coordinate system. That's the fancy name for this kind of graph. Oh, I want to tell you this. We call this an axis. We call this one the x-axis, and we call this one the y-axis. One of my students had gone to, when he first learned this, he had been in a traditional school, and his teacher told him to remember that always y's up. The y-axis goes up. I like to think this is the most obvious number line. We learned this kind first, and this is what we learned later, this to the moon and back thing. X comes before y. To me, it just has a logical progression. When I draw them, I always draw this one first, so that's the x. Okay, so we call it a Cartesian coordinate system after a dude named René Descartes, who was a Frenchman, a philosopher, and a mathematician, because back in the day, those two things went together. Doesn't that seem weird now? He came up with it. French philosopher, 17th century. Okay, so that means 1600s. And he was French. This is a name you'll see a lot. He's written some famous writings. They dropped the day part and used cart and turned it into an adjective. Cartesian matches to Descartes. All right, so he came up with this, which is pretty darn cool. And it's referred to by that name, but it's also called a rectangular coordinate system. And that describes the process we use for graphing points on it. Okay, so two names, and they do kind of emphasize different things. This one emphasizes who made it, and the other name emphasizes how you use it. Now, whenever we're talking about points on a graph, we create what is called an ordered pair. And what we do is we write a number on the x-axis, put a comma, a number on the y-axis, and then we put them in parentheses. That's the way we share information about the different points on this graph, and we're going to graph them in just a minute. But the ordered pair is a very important idea in this. Let's start graphing a few points. The first point I want to graph is the point 3, 3. Now, remember that the first number always relates to the x-axis. The second one always relates to the y. So what we do is we go to the x-axis and we find the 3. There it is. Then we find the y-axis, we find the 3 there as well, positive 3. That's there. So that means what we do is we mentally draw lines from the 3 on the x-axis to the 3 on the y-axis to connect, and then the name of this point is 3, 3. We write the ordered pair there. This is where we get the name rectangular coordinate system, because as you're mentally finding that point, you're creating a rectangle in your brain. We don't usually put the dots on here. I was just showing you that. But in your brain, you're drawing a rectangle between the axes of the coordinate system and then the lines you're drawing in your head. Let's do another one, B. This one is -4, 0. Okay, so we start with the x. Here's the x-axis. We go to -4. That's way down here. And then on the y-axis, we want to be at 0. That means we go neither up nor down. We stay right here at 0. And there is our second point, and we would call that -4, 0. It is the convention on a well-done graph to write the name of the important points next to the little dot that you make. All right? So this one we can't really draw the rectangle because it's just squished right there. C. 0, -3. Okay, so we go to 0 on the x-axis. That's right here, right? It's neither positive nor negative. It's right here. And then we go to -3 on the y-axis. So that's down there. 0, -3. Cool, right? And then our last one is D. 4, -2. So again, always the same. We go to +4 and then -2. Now, I'm doing my graph paper on I'm doing my graph on a sketch that I just made here in my notebook. That's not the neatest, most precise way to do it. The best thing to do is to get graph paper. Ask your mom to grab you some. They have it at Target, CVS, Walgreens, places like that. You can order it up on Amazon in a snap. And keep it handy so that when you are doing these problems, you don't have to fuss with drawing them out. Another really, really good approach is there are graph paper Post-it notes that are really nice, because that way when you're doing your homework, you can just slap down a little piece of graph paper for that particular problem and move on with your business. All right, so there are our 4 points. I want to give you one more piece of information. Well, technically more than that. These are called the quadrants of the graphing system. Notice I'm using Roman numerals to describe them. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going in what would seem to be a somewhat peculiar order. I'm starting here with 1, and then I'm going 2, 3, 4. It'll make more sense as we go further. This one is the most basic quadrant because it's positive, positive. And you'll notice that the positives and negatives follow a changing pattern as we go around. That just happens. You don't have to plan for it, but it's good to know. And this point in the very middle that has the ordered pair of 0, 0, we call that the origin because it's the very center of the graph. All right? So that's important to know. These numbers, and again, a couple years from now, we're going to use these a whole lot. This will be, no, next year too. This will be a big thing. And then the origin is a useful word. Okay. That is all you need to do for this lesson. I just want to show you here in the practice Graph these ordered pairs of x and y on a rectangular coordinate system. Okay, you know what this is. You know what ordered pairs mean. There they are. Grab a little piece of graph paper and graph away. In the beginning, we give you a lot of detail. John and I give you a lot of detail about how to draw these. But as you get further along, you can streamline this. Only put in the grid that you need, right? You only have to write in the numbers. If you wanted to, let's say you were graphing this point and you just wanted to do a really quick graph, I would do this. We're trying to graph 3, 3, right? So I put in 3 and I put in 3 and I know it's going to be right there. That's all I do. I don't put any numbers on this. And then I would go 3, 3. I might do an X and a Y. And if I was feeling fancy, I would do this. All right? So you can streamline this. You don't have to spend a lot of time writing fussy little numbers because that'll give everyone a headache. And, you know, life's too short. Okay, guess what? We're already through halfway through the first week back. Oh my gosh, time is flying. All right, thank you so much. I return you to your normal life. Goodbye.